There are going to be times as you work in IT and technology that you're going to be asked to do something that is seemingly impossible. I'm going to tell you a story about that exact thing. My first school that I worked at, I've been talking about that quite a bit because I feel like that is where I got a ton of experience. I got just all of these projects and things where I had to figure stuff out, and I love to figure stuff out. So it was perfect. However, sometimes you end up in a project that is maybe a little bit over your head, and that's exactly what this was. The school had about 46 old computers, 386s, that they wanted to have upgraded. Now the budget to upgrade was super tight. It was $160. I had to figure out how to get the most bang for my buck, $160 to be able to upgrade these computers. Now, let's go back in time a little bit in processors. Okay. So these days we have these Ryzen chips and all this stuff. Okay. So let's go back even before that. Remember, AMD had Athlon, and let's go back before that. Intel had let's go back to the Pentium 4 before the days of Pentium i3 and 7 that they have now, and i9s. Before that, right, there was Pentium Duos and Pentium 4s, Pentium 3s, 2s, Pentium 1. Okay. Now we're getting closer. All right. But back before the days of the Pentium, they were basically called 486 and 386 and 286. And then the first one was just 8086. Well, we're going back there. So this was in the days of the 386. Now, the government had purchased a lot of computers made by a company called Wang. They were these grayish computers. And if anybody has been out there and knows old school technology, you're going to remember, oh my goodness, I remember those big old beasts, so heavy. And they were like maybe 25 megahertz, 30 megahertz machines. So they were slow, and they were running Windows 3.1 back then. And I had made a commitment. When you make a commitment, you do everything you can to keep it. I had made a commitment to upgrade these computers for about $150 a piece. And there was 46 of them. And I did a ton of research. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I need to get at least Windows 95. This was back in the days of Windows 95. You need to at least get a Windows 95 license with these computers. And I was up to my eyeballs. Call it floating at the eyeballs, right? The alligator, like the alligator eyes, floating just above the surface. And so I did a ton of research, and I ended up getting, I got this guy to give us a great deal on a bunch of Pentium 166 processors with, so 166 megahertz is what we're talking about here, with 8 megabytes of RAM. Okay. Not gigabytes, 8 megabytes, and the motherboards. And then I shopped around on eBay, and I found somebody who had 40 something packs of Windows 95 licenses. Because you want them sealed. You don't want codes to have been used. So I pulled the trigger and bought all this stuff for about $160 a piece, which was a great deal, by the way. So then I got all this hardware in my hands, and I've got these old monster of a computer. Picture the oldest computer you can think of. Okay. And I've got all of these old computers, and now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to upgrade them. And it was a chore, because as soon as they started digging into the computers, I started to realize the rear face plates don't line up. Wang had made some special faceplate. They used some proprietary motherboard. Luckily, the screw holes did line up in the case, so I could get these motherboards, figured out a way to maneuver them to fit. But the rear covers, I had to like remove a piece of metal in order to get them to fit that way. So I figured it out. I got that working. And one thing I'd never even considered in my upgrade budget was that the hard drive space was going to be a problem. Well, these computers were running, most of them, the sample computers that I was testing with had like 200 megabyte, 240 megabyte hard drives in them. So I kind of figured, well, that's probably what they all are. I didn't do my research because then I found out a bunch of these computers actually had 100 megabyte hard drives in them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get an operating system to fit on here? And then on top of that, I got to figure out how am I going to get Microsoft Word on these, which that was another license dilemma that I had. So trial and error. I hacked my way. I took everything out of that installation that you could possibly remove. I used the installation from one hard drive and ran the installation so that it was running it onto the second one. I did all sorts of crazy things to make this work, but I got it to work. And then I think after all was said and done, I was able to get the computer with about those 100 megabyte hard drives with about 16 to 24, somewhere in there, megabytes free on the drive, but they ran. It actually didn't run too bad. So we had them save all of their work to floppy disk. We didn't want them to fill up the remaining space on the hard drives. But I got it to work. And I'll tell you, when you embrace a challenge and you get into it and you feel like, oh my goodness, this is impossible, sometimes you just have to like pull out all the stops and do all the research and figure out, well, is there any way that I can do this? I can still keep my commitment. And so I was able to keep that commitment. We were able to get our lab going. We were able to upgrade a bunch of the teachers' computers and get all those working. And I tell you what, though, I couldn't wait to see those computers go away. Just those old style cases, and they were hard to work on. Wang and the government had some agreement where a bunch of these computers just ended up getting donated to schools. And but the moral of the story is here that you're going to have to figure out sometimes how to push through a problem that seems like a wall, something that you don't think there's any way to solve this problem. And since that day, I have had numerous problems that have happened exactly that way. I'm working on a project and then all of a sudden it goes off the rails and I feel like it's impossible. I can't do this, only to simmer on the problem for a couple of days and then get unlocked and then figure out some way to get around the challenges that I was facing. Sometimes it's a matter of just opening up some internet research and trying to figure out, has somebody else done this? When I was working on this problem, man, there was nobody trying to install Windows 95 on 100 megabyte hard drives. Everybody's well beyond, probably running 300 to 500 megabytes at the time. So anyway, work hard, embrace those very difficult challenges, and that will build a grit in you to be able to get through things down the road. Because as you warm up into a career, you're going to have, there's no doubt about it, you're going to have other things fall on your plate. And some of those things are going to be overwhelming and you're not going to know how to manage them and not going to know how to, you got to embrace it. You got to get through it. Show your mental toughness. Hang in there.